The Bunker is a full-motion video horror game where you assist John, a man who grew up in a fallout shelter, as he braves his past and ventures down to discover what lurks at the bottom of the bunker. Atmosphere. In the early game, there's a lot of difficult scenes and long establishing shots of the bunker itself, and it's vaguely creepy in places, with all the old computers and how quiet and empty it all is. It's very lonely feeling, and there's an eerie silence that hangs over the abandoned rooms. I found things uncomfortably strange with the isolated underground life that John was obviously accustomed to, but the most jarring thing was him leaving his deceased mother's corpse in her bed with a cloth over her face, and there's a long shot of John creepily staring at her before reading her a story, which is still the most memorably disturbing part of the game for me. It left me feeling uncomfortable, but also very sorry for John because he obviously had no clue what to do with her when she died.
A drawing I did for Mum.
As the story progresses, there's a bit of minor dread that comes along with the escalating tension in the flashbacks and John's descent into the bunker, but that's really about it. It often feels like things are building towards something frightening or dangerous, but the story tends to swerve off course into mundane territory instead, and the real danger is something relatively normal being blown out of proportion. Oddly, because of how things panned out in the story, I didn't feel a lot of fear for what was happening, as much as pity for the situation that had befallen John. As well as a lack of interesting twists in the story, there's a problem with the immersion that comes with an FMV game. It's fun to watch, but it really doesn't feel like you're really there or experiencing it due to the medium. The game also has a surprising lack of interactivity, which is just a bit disappointing. It leaves things feeling rigid and creates a real disconnect between the player and the game, which is a hurdle other FMV games have managed to clear. It has one or two moments, but the atmosphere just doesn't really get through to me. That's no Harry Masons. Scares. The scares are mostly jump scares and they're a bit cheesy even for FMV game standards. Most of them are followed by loud music cues and they just don't seem to have much of an impact, if any at all. The late game uses a lot of ghost-like renditions of characters from the story's flashbacks and jump cuts to them as jump scares, but the effects used are underwhelming and it doesn't transition to the game very well as it all happens during cutscenes. There's a few quick-time events, but they're so rare that you don't often expect them when they do eventually arrive. Sadly, the death sequences that come from failing quick-time events are pretty weak, with most of them just fading out to a game over screen before putting you right back to try the scene again, which really makes death seem inconsequential, and the quick-time events become a bit pointless as a result. It really feels like the lack of interactivity hurts the game here too. That's still no Harry Masons. Sound design. The game's music is mostly electronic, with either eerie or foreboding synth pieces that feel like a stand-in for the typical orchestral style music that you usually find in horror films. There's a lot of raspy analog synthesizers that have a habit of representing radiation in the media. They work well enough, but are a bit over the top in scenes that don't seem to require the music to be as intense as it is. Some of the more important scenes have the music volume way too loud by default, and instead of adjusting it, the developers have just added subtitles, which seems like an odd fix for an easily resolved problem, though you can probably just adjust this yourself in the menus. The sound effects are of course all real from the filming process, so they're obviously very realistic. The actors' voices are captured really well, especially the governing general, whose voice sounds incredibly callous and cruel.
We'll run some tests, Mr. Bishop.
Is anyone else showing signs?
Yes, 6 others.
Quarantine them right away.
Mom?
The game doesn't require directional audio, and everything else is of course real. Besides the discrepancies with the music, the game's audio has a high production value sheen to it that only slips up now and then. That's one Harry Mason. Gore. The effects used to represent John's injury are really impressive, and as a result, difficult to look at. The section of John splinting his arm is one of the most hard to watch parts of the game. There's other decent effects with people getting shot, but by far the most gruesome part of the game sees John exploring a room full of bodies that seem to have decayed, and it's frankly disgusting seeing him put his hand into a bag of human remains and pulling out something that looks like lumpy viscera. The effects are the best kind of believable. That's 2 Harry Masons.
You've got to say it again, John.
You can't leave me alone, Mum.
Still be here. I'll always be here. But you forgot to say it again.
As long as I stick to the routine, I'll be safe. As long as I
Always be here.
stay in our rooms, I'll be safe. As long as I don't go outside, I'll be safe.
That's it. Good boy.
Story. The bunker begins with John being born underground in the bunker as the bombs fall, and then it jumps forward to his mother dying in bed before another jump forward to him seemingly alone in the fallout shelter that he's lived his whole life in. It follows his daily routine until one day there's a problem with the bunker's systems and he must disobey his mother's wishes and descend into the depths of the underground facility to fix whatever is causing the problem. The game jumps back and forth between flashbacks and the present day quite often, with the flashbacks explaining how things came to be and John recalling his part in the events that led up to him being alone. The flashbacks don't really do anything original and go along with a lot of similar media following the same themes. There's a plot twist near the end that I found a bit polarizing, and the ending itself is ambiguous as to what becomes of John. The game only really lasts about an hour and a half in length, and the story was a bit unoriginal and follows a lot of tropes from other movies and games that try the same theme. Making the final score 2 out of 5 Harry Masons. I find parts of this game were done extremely well, but it seems like this just shouldn't have been an FMV game and should have been a short film or something similar, with the long pauses cut out for player interaction. Again, I'd like to remind you this whole thing is down to my opinion on horror games. If you don't share this opinion, then that's cool, I get it. There'll be more horror reviews in the pipeline, and thanks for watching. Always go check out Bumps in the Middle of the Night. Peace.